Chapter 1. Down the Rabbit Hole. Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting and of having nothing to do. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4, Chapter 5, Chapter 6, Chapter 7, Chapter 8. When suddenly a white rabbit with pink eyes ran close by her. Chapter 11. There was nothing so very remarkable in that, nor did Alice think it so very much out of the way to hear the rabbit say to itself, "Oh dear. Oh dear. I shall be late." In another moment down went Alice after it, never once considering how in the world she was to get out again. Down, 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 down. Would the fall never come to an end? "I wonder how many miles I've fallen by this time?" she said aloud. "I must be getting somewhere near the center of the earth. Let me see, that would be 4,000 miles down. I think 4. Down, down, down. I wonder if I shall fall right through the earth. Down, down, down." And she tried to curtsy as she spoke. Fancy curtsying as you're falling through the air. Do you think you could manage it? And what an ignorant little girl she'll think me for asking. Down, down, down. There was nothing else to do. Chapter 2. The Pool of Tears. Curiouser and curiouser. Now I'm opening out like the largest telescope that ever was. Goodbye, feet. Goodbye, feet. Goodbye, feet. Goodbye, feet. Goodbye, feet. For when she looked down at her feet, they seemed to be almost out of sight. They were getting so far off. "Oh, my poor little feet. I wonder who will put on your shoes and stockings for you now, dears. I'm sure I shan't be able. I shall be a great deal too far off to trouble myself about you. You must manage the best way you can but I must be kind to them," thought Alice, "or perhaps they won't walk the way I want to go. Let me see. Oh dear, what nonsense I am talking." She sat down and began to cry again. "You ought to be ashamed of yourself." After a time she heard a little pattering of feet in the distance, and she hastily dried her eyes to see what was coming. It was the White Rabbit returning, splendidly dressed. "Stop this moment." "It must be a very pretty dance," said Alice timidly. "Would you like to see a little of it?" Will you join the dance? Will you, won't you join the dance? The next question is, in the world am I? Would not, could not, would not, could not, would not join the dance. Could not, would not, could not join the dance. Chapter 1. Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4, Chapter 5, Chapter 6, Chapter 7, Chapter 8, Chapter 9, Chapter 10, Chapter 11, almost wish I hadn't gone down that rabbit hole, and yet it's rather curious, you know. I do wonder what can have happened to me. When I used to read fairy tales, I fancied that kind of thing never happened, and now here I am in the middle of one. There ought to be a book written about me, but there ought. And when I grow up, I'll write one, but I'm grown up now, she added in a sorrowful tone. At least there's no room to grow up anymore here. But then, thought Alice, shall I never get any older than I am now? That'll be a comfort, one way never to be an old woman, but then always to have lessons to learn. Oh, I shouldn't like that. Oh, you foolish Alice, she answered herself. How can you learn lessons in here? Why, there's hardly room for you, and no room at all for any lesson books. And so she went on, taking first one side and then the other, and making quite a conversation of it altogether. Chapter 5. Advice from a Caterpillar. By this time she had found her way into a tidy little room with a table in the window. Who are you? And walked a little quicker. This was not an encouraging opening for a conversation. Alice replied. Let this be a lesson to you never to lose your temper. And after a few minutes it seemed quite natural to Alice to find herself talking familiarly with them, as if she had known them all her life. And here poor Alice began to cry again. I know I do, said Alice aloud, addressing nobody in particular. I don't know the meaning of half those long words, and, what's more, I don't believe you do either. But you're so easily offended. Just at present, at least I know who I was when I got up this morning, but I think I must have been changed several times since then. What do you mean by that? Chapter 7. A mad Explain yourself. I can't explain myself, I'm afraid, said Alice, because I'm not myself, you see. I don't see. On various pretexts they all moved off, and Alice was soon The table was a large one, but the three were all crowded together at one corner of it. Well, no room. No room. They cried out when they saw Alice coming. There's plenty of room, said Alice indignantly, and she sat down in a large armchair at one end of the table. It wasn't very civil of you to sit down without being invited. Tut, tut, child. Everything's got a moral, if only you can find it. You should learn not to make personal remarks, Alice said with some severity. It's very rude. And the moral of that is, oh, 'tis love, that makes the world go round. Exactly so, said Alice. Then you should say what you mean. And the moral of that is, the more there is of mine, the less there is of yours. Apostrophe you. I know, exclaimed Alice, who had not attended to this last remark. At least, I mean what I say, that's the same thing. As there seemed to be no sort of chance of her ever getting out of the room again. No wonder she felt unhappy. I almost wish I hadn't gone down that rabbit hole, and yet it's rather curious. And the moral of that is, be what you would seem to be. Or if you'd like it put more simply, never imagine yourself not to be otherwise than what it might appear to others that what you were or might have been was not otherwise than what you had been would have appeared to them. I think you ought to tell me who you are first, which brought them back again to the beginning of the conversation. Chapter 11. Who are you?